There is something deeply unsettling about the moment a narcissist realizes they can't control you. You've seen it before. That subtle shift in their demeanor when your emotional strength becomes apparent. The way their eyes narrow, the sudden change in tactics, the desperate scramble to regain what they've lost, your power. You might think you're imagining it, but you're not. Carl Jung understood this dynamic deeply when he explored the inflated ego and its desperate need for dominance. He wrote about individuals whose psychic energy becomes trapped in an endless cycle of self-admiration, unable to form genuine connections, because their entire existence depends on control over others. Most people don't recognize this pattern because they're too busy trying to please, to accommodate, to keep the peace. But you're different. You've developed something that terrifies them. Emotional strength. The kind that doesn't bend to manipulation. The kind that sees through the games. The kind that simply refuses to participate in their theater of control. And that's when everything changes. When a narcissist encounters someone who won't be moved by their usual tactics, something primal activates within them. It's not just frustration, it's fear, because you represent their greatest threat. Someone who doesn't need their validation, someone who won't feed their ego, someone who has found their center and refuses to be pulled away from it. Jung called this the shadow confronting consciousness. The narcissist's inflated ego suddenly meets something it cannot absorb, cannot diminish, cannot control. And that's when you see their true nature emerge. Not the charming mask they present to the world, but the desperate, frightened core that has been hiding beneath all along. You've probably experienced this yourself. The moment you stopped reacting to their provocations, the day you chose silence over engagement, the time you simply walked away instead of trying to explain yourself. And what happened? They escalated. They tried new tactics. They became more desperate, more aggressive, more obvious in their attempts to break you down. This isn't coincidence. It's psychology. The narcissist's entire identity is built on a house of cards, and your strength threatens to bring it all tumbling down. They need you to be weak so they can feel strong. They need you to be uncertain so they can feel superior. They need you to be reactive so they can feel in control. But when you refuse to play their game, when you stand firm in your own truth, when you remain unshaken by their storms, something profound happens. The power dynamic shifts, and they can't stand it. Understanding the narcissist's mind requires diving into what Jung described as the ego complex. This is not merely self-confidence or healthy self-regard. It's a psychological structure built on false foundations, requiring constant external validation to maintain its fragile existence. Freud observed that narcissistic individuals have what he called fixations of libido that go back to much earlier stages of development. In simpler terms, they're emotionally stunted, trapped in a childhood need for absolute control and admiration. Their psychic energy, instead of flowing outward toward genuine connection with others, remains turned inward, creating what Jung termed autoerotism, a self-obsessed loop that leaves them incapable of true intimacy. This inward focus creates a terrible vulnerability. Because when all your energy is devoted to maintaining an image, any challenge to that image becomes an existential threat. Your emotional strength doesn't just irritate them. It reveals the fundamental emptiness of their entire approach to life. Marcus Aurelius wrote about people who despise each other yet seek to please each other, and try to surpass others in worldly ostentation and grandeur. He was describing exactly this type of person. The narcissist lives in constant fear that others will see through their performance, so they work tirelessly to maintain control over how they're perceived. But you've stopped participating in their performance. You've stopped feeding their need for validation. You've stopped allowing them to use you as a mirror that reflects back only what they want to see. And this creates what Jung called porme, an energy that can manifest as force, attack, compulsion, impulsiveness, violence, urgency, zeal. When your strength threatens their control, this energy explodes. The danger lies in what happens when the narcissist's repressed unconscious material begins to surface. Jung warned that the unconscious is a source of danger when individuals refuse to face their own shadows. The narcissist has spent years, perhaps decades, avoiding any real self-examination. They've projected their fears, their inadequacies, their rage onto others, using manipulation and control to avoid confronting their own inner emptiness. Your emotional strength forces them into a corner they've been avoiding their entire lives. The corner where they must face themselves without the buffer of your reactions, your explanations, your attempts to appease them. And that's when they reveal their true arsenal of tactics designed to break you down and restore their sense of dominance. The first weapon in the narcissist's arsenal when they encounter your strength is debasement. They will attempt to diminish you, to make you feel small, incompetent, worthless. This isn't random cruelty. It's calculated psychological warfare designed to restore the power balance they feel slipping away. Jung wrote about this process of debasement as a defense mechanism of the inflated ego. When the narcissist can't absorb your energy through normal manipulation, they try to destroy your sense of self-worth. They'll attack your capabilities, your intelligence, your appearance, your choices, anything that might make you doubt yourself and return to a state where you need their validation. But there's something even more insidious at work here: projection. Freud described how individuals project their own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, and impulses onto others. The narcissist's accusations about you are actually confessions about themselves. When they call you selfish, they're revealing their own selfishness. When they accuse you of being manipulative, they're describing their own tactics. Alan Watts explained this perfectly when he described how the self-conscious ego creates a sense of separation and leads to trying to interpret the world through one's own limited definitions. The narcissist can only see the world through the lens of their own dysfunction, so they assume everyone operates from the same place of manipulation and control. Your strength threatens this worldview because you're operating from a completely different foundation. You're not trying to control or manipulate, you're simply being authentic. And authenticity is terrifying to someone whose entire existence is built on pretense. When direct debasement fails to break your resolve, the narcissist often shifts to a more devastating tactic: withdrawal and abandonment. This isn't the healthy distancing that you might choose for your own well-being. This is strategic emotional terrorism designed to punish you for your strength. Freud observed that people with narcissistic tendencies lack the ability for what he called transference, the capacity to form genuine emotional connections with others. Jung considered this the central problem in dealing with such individuals. They don't actually connect with you as a person. They connect with what you provide them: attention, validation, control. So when you stop providing these things, when your strength makes you unavailable for their emotional exploitation, they simply discard you. But this discarding isn't quiet or dignified. It's designed to hurt. They want you to feel the pain of their absence so acutely that you'll come crawling back, weakened and willing to resume your role in their psychological drama. This abandonment often comes with a particularly cruel twist. They'll make it seem like your fault, like your strength, your boundaries, your refusal to be controlled are character flaws that drove them away. They'll play the victim, telling others how unreasonable you become, how difficult you are to deal with, how they had no choice but to protect themselves from your toxic behavior. The irony is almost laughable if it weren't so painful. Your health threatens their sickness, and somehow you become the problem. But when even abandonment fails to bring you back into their orbit, when you remain strong despite their withdrawal, the narcissist often escalates to their most dangerous tactic: open aggression and hostility. Turgenev, in his psychological portraits, described characters who displayed anger and contempt when their worldview was challenged. This isn't mere frustration. It's the rage of someone whose entire identity is being threatened by your refusal to validate their distorted reality. Freud suggested that neurosis arises from conflicts between the libido and the ego. When the narcissist's ego-driven need for control meets the immovable object of your strength, that conflict manifests as aggression. They may become verbally abusive, spreading lies about you, attempting to turn others against you, or even becoming physically threatening. This aggression serves multiple purposes. It's an attempt to intimidate you back into compliance. It's a way of releasing the internal pressure created by their inability to control you. And it's a desperate effort to regain some sense of power in a situation where they feel utterly powerless. The key insight here is that their aggression is actually evidence of your strength, not your weakness. Healthy people don't become enraged when others set boundaries. Secure individuals don't launch personal attacks when someone refuses to be controlled. Only those whose entire psychological structure depends on dominance react with such venom to your autonomy. Throughout all these tactics runs a common thread: resistance. Jung, drawing from Freud's insights, noted that resistance always has an intention and a meaning. The narcissist's resistance to your strength isn't random. It's systematic, purposeful, and reveals everything about their internal state. They resist your boundaries because boundaries threaten their sense of unlimited access to your energy. They resist your emotional stability because it highlights their chaos. They resist your authenticity because it exposes their pretense. They resist your strength because it renders their manipulation tactics powerless. Understanding this resistance helps you see their behavior not as a reflection of your worth, but as a desperate attempt to maintain a psychological system that your growth threatens to destroy. But here's what they don't understand, what they can't comprehend from their limited perspective. Your strength isn't something you develop to hurt them. It's something you develop to heal yourself. And no amount of their resistance can take that away from you. Laozi taught us that true power comes not from controlling others, but from mastering ourselves. He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself has insight. He who conquers others has power. He who conquers himself is strong. This ancient wisdom cuts to the heart of why the narcissist's tactics ultimately fail against genuine emotional strength. They're operating from a place of external power, the power to manipulate, control, and dominate. But you've discovered something far more profound: internal power, the power that comes from self-knowledge, self-acceptance, and self-mastery. When you know yourself deeply, when you've faced your own shadows and integrated them, when you've learned to find your center regardless of the storms around you, you become unshakable. Not because nothing affects you, but because you have a core of truth that remains constant regardless of external circumstances. Boethius wrote, "He who sets his aim at power must first master his own spirit." The narcissist has never done this internal work. They've spent their lives trying to control the external world because they're terrified of facing their internal reality. But you've chosen the harder path. You've done the work of understanding yourself, healing your wounds, and building strength from the inside out. This is why their tactics feel increasingly ineffective against you. You're not reactive because you're not carrying unhealed wounds that they can exploit. You're not desperate for their approval because you've learned to validate yourself. You're not afraid of their abandonment because you've learned to be whole on your own. Oscar Wilde suggested that a person who masters themselves can end sadness as easily as he can create joy. This isn't about becoming emotionless or detached. It's about developing such a clear understanding of your own emotional landscape that you're no longer at the mercy of others' psychological games. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that all is opinion and pride. The narcissist's entire worldview is built on opinions and pride, their opinion of themselves. their pride in their ability to control others, their need for others to share their inflated self-image. But when you recognize this as mere opinion rather than truth, their power over you dissolves. The strength you've developed isn't hard or brittle. It's what Laozi described as the power of softness, conquering hardness. The virtue of non-struggle becomes your greatest asset. You don't need to fight them, argue with them, or prove them wrong. You simply exist in your truth. And that truth is so solid, so unshakable, that their chaos cannot penetrate it. This is the power of what Laozi called non-action and non-interference. You're not trying to change them, fix them, or make them see reason. You're simply protecting your own energy and maintaining your own peace. And paradoxically, this non-resistance is the most powerful resistance of all. When you stop struggling against their manipulation, when you stop trying to explain yourself or defend your choices, when you simply are who you are without apology or justification, something remarkable happens. They lose all leverage over you. Their tactics become obviously desperate. Their behavior reveals itself as the psychological dysfunction it always was. But perhaps most importantly, you break free from the vicious cycle that Alan Watts described. The futile attempt to escape fear through control. The narcissist is trapped in this cycle, constantly trying to control others to avoid facing their own inner terror. But you found a different way. You've learned to face your fears directly, to integrate them, to find peace not through control, but through acceptance. This doesn't mean you become passive or allow yourself to be mistreated. Quite the opposite. Your strength manifests as clear boundaries, unwavering standards, and the courage to walk away from anyone who threatens your peace. As Marcus Aurelius advised, the best revenge is not to become like them. You don't need to destroy the narcissist to protect yourself. You simply need to be unavailable for their psychological games. You need to be, as Laozi taught, like water, soft enough to flow around obstacles, but persistent enough to carve new paths. Laozi also reminds us that he who knows enough is rich. The narcissist never knows enough. They're constantly seeking more validation, more control, more proof of their superiority. But you've learned the secret of enough self-knowledge to be secure, enough self-love to set boundaries, enough strength to stand alone if necessary. This is why their tactics ultimately fail. They're trying to make you hungry for things you no longer need. They're trying to take away things you no longer depend on for your sense of self. They're threatening to withhold what you've learned to provide for yourself. And perhaps most crucially, you've learned to seek authentic connections with people who can actually engage in what Freud called transference. Genuine emotional connection. You no longer waste your energy trying to force connection with people who are psychologically incapable of reciprocity. The narcissist reveals their limitations through their inability to understand your strength. They interpret your boundaries as attacks, your peace as threats, your growth as betrayal. This says everything about them and nothing about you. Your journey to emotional strength wasn't easy. You probably endured years of confusion, self-doubt, and pain before you understood what was happening. You likely blamed yourself, tried harder to please, exhausted yourself trying to fix what was never your responsibility to fix. But now you know better. You understand that the narcissist's reaction to your strength isn't a sign of your failure. It's proof of your success. You've touched their deepest wound, their core vulnerability, their greatest fear, the possibility that their entire worldview is built on lies. They're not angry because you're wrong. They're angry because you're right. Right about your worth, right about your boundaries, right about your decision to prioritize your own well-being over their need for control. Their desperation in the face of your strength reveals the house of cards they've been living in. Every manipulation tactic they employ, every attempt to break you down, every escalation of their behavior is evidence that your strength is real, effective, and threatening to their psychological dysfunction. But here's what you must never forget. Their reaction is about them, not you. Their inability to respect your boundaries reflects their character, not yours. Their need to diminish you reveals their own smallness, not any deficiency in you. You've learned what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, separate from others' projections and expectations. You've developed what Laozi described as inner strength, the kind that doesn't need external validation to exist. This strength isn't something they can take away, no matter how hard they try. It's not dependent on their approval, their presence, or their opinion of you. It exists independently, sourced from your own self-knowledge and nurtured by your commitment to your own growth. The narcissist's tactics may have worked on you before, when you were still seeking external validation, still believing you needed their approval to be worthy. But that person no longer exists. You've outgrown the need for their psychological games. You've developed immunity to their manipulation through the simple act of knowing yourself too well to be fooled. Remember this when they escalate. Remember this when they try new tactics. Remember this when they attempt to make you doubt your own strength. Their behavior is not evidence that you're wrong. It's evidence that you're finally, beautifully, unshakably right about who you are and what you deserve. Your emotional strength isn't cruelty disguised as growth. It's not selfishness masquerading as self-care. It's not coldness pretending to be boundaries. It's the natural result of someone who has done the hard work of understanding themselves, healing their wounds, and choosing to live authentically. The narcissist's inability to recognize this, their need to interpret your health as sickness and your strength as weakness, reveals everything about their internal state and nothing about your character. You are not responsible for their healing. You are not required to dim your light to make them comfortable. You are not obligated to remain small so they can feel big. Your only responsibility is to continue growing, continue strengthening, continue becoming more fully yourself. Their reaction to that growth is their problem to solve, not yours to manage. This is your reminder that when a narcissist sees you're too strong, their desperate tactics aren't a reflection of your worth. They're a celebration of your growth. Stand firm in that truth. It will set you free.